Okay, we are picking up this week at Roman numeral 5, which is called kosher speech, meaning the things that come out of her mouth. Okay, we've been spending a lot of time what goes into the mouth, but what comes out of your mouth also matters. And I think this is actually one of the ways in which observant Jewish communities really are distinct. This, insofar as other pieces of the Jewish ethical tradition are less unique to Jews, like I don't know, being kind and honest and charitable and trustworthy and faithful. Right? Like I think every religion really teaches this, whereas the rules of how to speak seem, in my experience, to be more uniquely Jewish, and so I think sort of worth just sort of appreciating that, right? I think when you've been in communities that really care about and observe these ways of speaking, I think it really like it's noticeable and it makes a difference. And so, but it's also really hard. And this is these are some of the areas that it's like hardest, most challenging to observe with real consistency and integrity. So, okay, the first is what under the category of slander. There are actually three different levels of slander. The first, not listed here, is richilut. Rechilut is idle gossip. And it's generally considered forbidden to share information with others, even if it's true, if there's no purpose in sharing it. There's an aphorism that great people talk about ideas, mediocre people talk about, what do we, mediocre people talk about events, and base people talk about other people. All right. So Richilut is just idle gossip. It's, I think in some cultures it's like a kind of neutral social lubricant. I think there's a Jewish tradition has a real negative perspective on Richilut. Again, also idle gossip, sharing information with other people that nobody needs to know, doesn't concern them, even though it's sort of interesting and sort of scintillating and tantalizing. You don't need to know it. And it's like a kind of waste of you could be talking about ideas, you could be talking about events even, but to talk about other people in there that in ways that are not relevant is considered is frowned upon in Jewish tradition. The next level is lashon hara. Lashon hara is when you say things that are true and damaging or true and derogatory. And so, like that's could be all sorts of, it could be something about their appearance or about their, you know, like Charlotte, she has such a big nose, she looks like an eagle, or maybe a nickname that kind of is like derogatory and will be, hard to forget. Stan the man, I don't know. It's like
Boy, uncle.
no, it's not even here, no, because it's not even that. It's derogatory and it sort of the person is lessened in the estimation of the person you talk to if you use a cheapening, if you just share, or Frankie is such a bad sense of humor, can't take a joke. Uh, what a, Esther, what a temper she has. Um, okay. Harold is so stupid. Like you can't explain anything to him. He's like so dumb, right? So they're true. This is true, but it's derogatory or damaging, and so it's considered forbidden to share. Um, and it's I think often in our circle, more like secular circle, it's like a defense. Oh, well, it's true. Everything saying is true, but no, that's the point. Lashon hara, this sort of damaging, bad speech, by definition, it's true. Okay, you're saying true things, and that it's still forbidden. Okay. Now there is an important exception, which is the toelet. Toelet means purpose. So there's a reason why somebody has to know. Like, don't go to Dr. Schwartz. He's really a terrible dentist. Don't hire um, Yosef the plumber. He really, like doesn't know anything about plumbing. He's really unreliable. Okay, that's if there's a reason why the other person has to know the information, then sharing it becomes permissible and maybe even obligatory, right? Because I'm saving you from harm if I'm because I'm sharing information about that you need to know to avoid this damage. don't hire Yosef, hire Moshe instead to do your plumbing, right? Like but that's only l'toelet. It's only permissible or maybe obligatory to share because you're hiring a plumber. If you're not hiring a plumber, then there's no reason for me to share this information with you. And so it no longer becomes permissible in that case. So the toilet is to share information. It might be damaging and derogatory about somebody, but it has to be true. And the person has to have a reason for wanting to know it. Now, it could be in the context of, let's say, a marriage, maybe in some other very, very intimate relationships where sharing something where the toilet is like catharsis or kind of not even catharsis, just yeah, like just sort of the processing of the events of the day. Like Maya, who works with me in the office, she really was giving me a hard time today. She was just everything I did, she was criticizing. It was like really, really rough, really, really hard. Um, and like that's derogatory about Maya, right? But I'm sharing it with my wife because like that's maybe like a spouse is like can be in some ways considered an extension of one's person in certain aspects, maybe in this aspect, or maybe the self-preservation of the kind of revealing this information to a spouse, certainly to a therapist, right? Like it's, you know, even though the person doesn't really have a practical reason to know this information, it's still generally permissible. Um, and also, if somebody is a criminal, is abusive, is a thief, is exploiting others, is right? So then there's a great exposing them is very valuable, right? That you're preventing terrible harm to come to the broader community. So that's certainly permissible. But again, just otherwise, sharing true and derogatory information or true and damaging information is considered forbidden. That's lashon hara, unless it is the toilet. Again, for somebody has to know, don't hire this guy as your plumber. Don't hire this person to work for you. Don't go on a date with this person because she actually is a psychopath, right? Like, don't, okay? Like it happens, okay? Right, yeah. Just so they say, right? If you're somebody, they said if somebody is if they're on good terms with their ex, that's like it's like a good sign, maybe. I don't know if it's always true, but I heard somebody say that. Yeah, it's like a thing. Okay. So and then the final stage. Okay, so we have Richilut, which is true, idle gossip, true and not damaging, but there's no reason for anyone to know it, to share it, just idle gossip, frowned upon. Lashon hara is true and damaging, true and derogatory, that's forbidden, unless there's a reason for the person to need to know. Okay, again, to prevent harm to the community, for the dangerous person, threatening person, somebody's about to make a business investment or to enter into some sort of relationship with this person, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, or a professional relationship, they need to know what you know about this person. Okay, that's the toilet, then you can share that information. Third level is Moshe Shemra, that's just slandering. That's what we call that's like lies. Okay, that's like worst of all, and I don't want to tell you why lying about someone else is bad. I think even exaggerating true things is also problematic, right? If you have something bad to say, derogatory, damaging, say it in as true a way as possible. Don't say he's a terrible plumber, doesn't know what he's doing. Say, I don't really have confidence in his plumbing because, he actually quoted me one price and really charged me much more and didn't really anticipate what you have to do. It was really left me really feeling, didn't right? Like say the facts. Say the fact. Okay. Questions, comments on this? Okay. I don't know if spend time in communities where people are really careful about this. I think it really is noticeable. I think it's really beautiful to try to because it just elevates the entire conversation, right? When you're not talking about other people, so what are you going to talk about? Well, you'll talk about ideas, and that's just a nicer way, right? You'll talk about things of like real meaning. Um, I think it elevates the entire conversation, and I think it's nice to know to have the confidence that people aren't saying nasty things about you behind your back, which when you realize I know, when you realize people talk about you, it's like freaky. Okay. So hopefully you hope that people are only saying good things about you. Okay. Um, next. There is a letter B, sheker and shach. Generally, we have to be truthful. Torah says means sheker tirchak. You have to stay far away from lies, for anything that isn't true. Um, but The rabbinic tradition gives us a few exceptions to this rule, and generally those exceptions are lies for the sake of peace. Have you studied this before? Have you counted this? And the biblical proofs for this, or the halachic, the case in the Talmud where this is discussed? I haven't said it before. Maybe you come across it in your readings, or your thinking. Any lies in the Torah? Anybody who lies in the Torah for the sake of peace? There are a couple. Okay.
Two sisters.
I'm sorry?
In Torah, the two sisters.
Yeah, what about that? Say more.
When the youngest tells the oldest, I think how she said to Jacob, like, where spirit words. So
That's a lie for the sake of peace. What's the peace how's that a lie to save someone's feelings? It means to not to embarrass your sister? Yeah, good. Okay, that's a good example. That's not in the Torah, that's the Midrash, it's not in the Torah, but a good example. That's actually not, maybe because it's not explicit in the Torah, it's not, right? Rachel had to, according to this Midrash, Rachel was complicit in her father's switch of Leah for her in the first marriage to Joseph. And she shared with her sister like a secret code that she and Jacob had worked out so that Leah would be able to convince Joseph that she was really Rachel until the morning when he could see who he had married. And according to this Midrash, Rachel is maybe for the sake of to avoid embarrassment is different than for the sake of peace, I think. But okay, so the examples. So the examples in the Torah is that when God tells Sarah that she's going to have a baby, she says, "How could I have a baby? My husband is so old." And then God says to Abraham, "Why is Sarah laughing?" Saying, "How could I have a baby? Because I am too old." So God changes Sarah's words to preserve Avram's feelings. So that's the case of lying for the sake of peace. The other example, maybe Joseph's brothers make up this story about our father told us on his deathbed to you, Joseph, should forgive us for what we did, and that doesn't seem to ever happen. So maybe they're lying for the sake of peace. That's another example. The Abraham one is, I think, I don't recall if that one is also in the Talmud, but that seems like another example to me. And then the case in which this is discussed is, I think that case is the test case, the Talmud's where this is discussed is, I mean, discussed in general, you're allowed to lie for the sake of peace or deviate from truth for the sake of peace. That was what this mashana, which is not lying, it's just deviating a little bit from the truth, shifting a little bit from the truth. For the sake of peace, the example, the question is, and the Gemara, the Talmud asks the question of, Ketzad Meraktim Lifnei Akala, how do we dance before a bride? Meaning, what do we sing as we are dancing before a bride at her wedding? And Beit Hillel says, Kala Na'eh B'Chasuda. The bride is beautiful and gracious. And that's actually a song. I don't know if you've ever been to a Jewish wedding, the Ketzad Meraktim, Ketzad Meraktim, Ketzad Meraktim, Lifnei Hakala. How do we dance and sing? How do we dance and sing? How do we? Kala Na'eh B'Chasuda. Bride is beautiful, and she is grateful. That's how we dance before the bride. Okay, so that's like a very famous wedding song. That's Beit Hillel's answer to the question. Beit Shammai's answer is Kala Kamochi. You call it like you see it. Okay? Which is not, which would be, big nose. I don't know, whatever, you like that. Okay? Like there's no song about Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai, you just gotta be totally truthful. You just say the truth. And you gotta just, or maybe find something nice to say about her. The bride has a lovely personality, right? And her she's very smart and she has a great personality, like okay, like that. So that's Beit Shammai. We don't. That's not our practice. Our practice is no. You say it's beautiful. Now maybe it's not a lie. Every bride is beautiful in the eyes of her husband on her wedding day. Okay, so you can maybe it's not really a lie, but that's an example of there's a higher truth. There's a higher truth, and that higher truth is we should all get along and be in peace with each other. So you don't have to be fully honest if someone said, right. I mean, this is right. Joseph, if a woman ever asks you, does this dress make me look fat? The answer is no. The answer is no. Okay. All right. Okay. Um, Questions or comments on this? Okay, great. Next, ona'ah. So ona'ah is a Torah tradition. It literally means oppression, and there are two different forms of ona'ah. One form of ona'ah is monetary fraud, in which you charge more or less than the fair market value of the product. So either you, right, and you have a sixth of deviation of fair market value. And if you're charging more or paying less, that is, hello, we're in the library. Who's this? Hello, hi.
Oh, hey, hey, Sarah. Yeah, we can pass. Yeah, they're downstairs in the kitchen.
Oh,
It's Sarah
oh,
Isaacson.
okay. She's here for what she doing?
I think she's helping Talia and
Oh, that's so nice.
yeah, yeah.
That's great. Okay. Okay. Um, so it's sort of in a contemporary, perspective, it's sort of hard to know exactly what this means because there is no objective fair market price of most things other than what a willing buyer and a willing seller agree on the price. Maybe, but maybe there's certain types of maybe like we'd call it what do they call it when it's like a rainstorm when they raise the price of umbrellas, it's like, what's the word for that? It's like, there's a word, price gouging, right? So that is a concept that exists. It seemed to be exploitative, right? Unfair. And I think in the times of the Talmud, it was assumed that, like, no, there is an objective price of this thing. If you go to the marketplace, this is the price you'll pay. And if you're going to someone's house, you're charging them, and the price deviates more or less, right? Somebody is defrauding the other. Um, I think like a economist would say, no, no, you're paying for the convenience of not having to go to the marketplace. You're paying for the convenience of not having to search out and find the whatever, fine. But like I think the Talmud assumes there is that an objective fair price. If you're paying, if the agreed upon price is too much or too little, somebody's defrauding the other, the sale can be overturned. Okay, you should not try to exploit somebody. And a business goal is not to get as much value as you can. There's like a sort of objective there's also a value of justice in this and not non-exploitation in every business interaction. And so even though you could get this price, you shouldn't try. That's ona'ah. Talmud also discusses ona'at dvarim, ona'ah through words, which seems to be defined as using language in ways that causes pain. And there are specific examples that are given. And really, I would say, in contemporary terms, we would call it like triggering language, language that for the person you're speaking to evokes certain painful memories or associations. So the examples in the Talmud to speak to somebody who converted to Judaism and say, remember that your grandparents were worshiping idols. Like that's not that's like a painful thing to bring up. Okay, it's forbidden. Okay, you're causing pain to somebody through your speech. Somebody even using words like somebody whose parent was a bandit and was hanged for being a bandit. Don't use the word hanged. Like don't say, oh, look at those fish hanging over there in the marketplace. Don't use that word, right? It's a triggering word for this person. Right? So, which I think is like it's a heightened ethical responsibility to be careful that the words you use for the person you're speaking to, even though there's nothing wrong with that word, it's a totally fine word. Why is it a snowflake? Like I'm using, it's like the fish are hanging in the fishmonger's stall in the marketplace. What's the big deal? Well, for him, it's a big deal. That word, like, is a traumatic word for him because he associates with loss of his father and his shame over being the child of a highwayman. So don't use the word. That's on you. Okay. So really, it's a obligation to avoid causing pain to others, even through no fault of your own, right? No bad intention. Using ordinary words that are totally fine for 99.9% of the population. But for this person, the word has a triggering impact. Don't use it. Like you have a responsibility to avoid pain to others, even through the choice of your words. Okay. Questions, comments? All right. Moving on. Okay. Lifnei Iver is Torah says, "Lifnei Iver lo tisin mikshol," do not place a stumbling block before the blind. And um, stumbling block. So that is literally someone's blind. Don't put something in front of them, right? So, but the rabbis understood that metaphorically to be in a couple of different ways. One is it is to give someone bad advice. It's akin to placing a stumbling block. He's blind, she's blind regarding this thing, and you're giving them bad advice. That's like putting a stumbling block before someone blind. That then becomes applied, or also is applied to enabling someone to sin. What's enabling somebody to sin? You're on one side of the river, they're on the other side of the river. There's a little basket on a string. You can pass things back and forth. Say, please pass me that non-kosher food from your side over to mine. So if you do it, you're enabling them to sin. That's lifnei iver lo tihen mikshol. Okay? So, yeah.
So, if if there's like a non-Jewish person and there's a time when I did DoorDash.
Yeah.
If I deliver non-kosher items
Yeah.
and after the conversion, when I become a Jew and I
Yeah.
deliver non-kosher food to a non-Jew, is that also a violation of that rule?
So what do you think?
I think it should be avoided,
Why?
is since I'm enabling another person to, well, hmm, I guess it's not binding on them, but I
Yeah.
should be encouraging, right?
Encouraging what?
Encouraging people to follow the laws of the Torah, right? Or is it not?
You should not be encouraging food. Non-Jews are allowed to eat non-kosher food, and the Torah says we're supposed to give them our non-kosher food. The Torah says this was like the animals that aren't kosher you should give to to non-Jews. Um, there's no reason why someone not Jewish should eat kosher food only, and there's no reason to refrain from giving them non-kosher food. And so I think there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't. Now there would be a problem if it's meat and milk that cooked together, because if you recall, meat and milk cooked together, there's a benefit prohibition. So I don't know if you're not cooking it, you're just delivering it. I'm not sure you're getting benefit from it, maybe because somebody else cooked it and you're not even selling it, you're just delivering it. So I actually don't know that that would be a problem either to deliver it as DoorDash. I don't think it is actually. Um, but if there's something that a Gentile isn't allowed to do, then you couldn't, then I think it would be a problem to enable them to prevent the violation. Like, hey, pass me that idol that I, right? For example, that, I don't know, right? Or, okay, that's leaf neighbor. You're enabling them to do a sin they couldn't do without you. Um, Now, if they could do it without you, then it's not lifnei iver. Like you're both on the same side of the river, and they say, "Pass me that non-kosher food." So they could get it without you. You're helping them, but you're not enabling it. That's called misayeh. Misayeh is to aid in the performance of a sin, even though they were capable of doing it on their own. So that's not lifnei. So lifnei iver is the most severe. You're enabling someone else to sin. Misayeh is you're participating in a sin or enabling or helping them, but you're not enabling it.
Mm.
So most of the time, pushing, sending things in baskets or rivers is not so common, but some examples could be inviting someone Jewish over to your house on Shabbat and they're going to drive. I'm not saying it's just like things that you have to deal with. Like there are, okay, so you can see it. I don't know, so how would you think about that?
They, I need some other way.
What do you mean?
So they wouldn't have to drive in order to come to my house.
How would you do that?
Probably, maybe going for a place, um, hmm, maybe having them stay over or, get an Airbnb closer so that they can.
So you have a Jewish friend or relative and you want to spend Shabbat together, you can't invite them over. You have to arrange for, I'm sorry, I can't invite you over to my house because I can't enable you to, like, it would be a violation of my Shabbat observance or of Lifnei Iver for me to invite you over. And so if you want to spend Shabbat, if you want to come for dinner, you're going to have to rent an Airbnb and spend the night. Okay, what's the counter argument? Why do you think it would be permissible? So anyone else, you can also answer if you want. What's the other side of this debate? And I'll just say your side, that's the strict side, is basically the position of Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of the great scholars of the 20th century, who goes so far as to say synagogues should not have youth programming because if synagogues have youth programming, parents will drive to synagogue so that their kids can participate in like Shabbat youth programming. Parents will drive their kids to shul, and you can't encourage that, right? He goes so far as to say that. Probably, presumably, would also say that synagogues can't allow people who don't live within walking distance to be members of the synagogue, because we send them, promotional information, you come get tickets for Rosh Hashanah, right? Or you're gonna have you have a special event, having a special lecture this Shabbat. Please join us. So we send out those promotional materials to someone who lives more than driving distance, where encouraging them to drive, and that's forbidden. So that's where Moshe finds it. What's the other position? What would the rationale you'd make for the other position? Why would you, if you want to say it was permissible, why would you say it's permissible? You don't have to, but like, what would be the argument? Should try to see it from both sides.
That they could still celebrate Shabbat. Like if I come to this person's house and like yes, like they might not observe it the full way, but like maybe like they are depressed or they're lonely or something is bad with them mentally. So coming and observing Shabbat will enlighten their day and like can it be considered Pikuah Nefesh?
So never like if somebody's actually in risk of dying, if they don't come to your house for Shabbos dinner, obviously they can come to your house for Shabbos. You can get in the car and drive to them and bring them to your house. If somebody's actually like at risk of dying. That's a rare instance, I think, that somebody's going to die if they don't come.
Piece of the day.
So somebody who's sad and alone is not a reason to break Shabbat. You can only break Shabbat if life is in risk. Okay, that's the only excuse for breaking Shabbat is if somebody might die. Not that they will die, they might die if you don't break Shabbat. If somebody might die, you have to break Shabbat. There's no right, you have to break Shabbat to save a life, or it's forbidden to break Shabbat. Okay, that's yes, yes, I know. So your first attempt was not a good one. Okay, try better. Okay, keep going. Here's what I want to say. There are two possible. One possible avenue for the other side is to say that the paradigmatic example of Lifnei Ira, we just said 3 minutes ago, was passing the non-kosher food to the other side of the river. Because you're enabling them to sin by putting the food in the basket and sending it across the river. But if you're on the same side of the river, it's not Lifnei Ira because they could get the food without you. So this person you're inviting to your house, they don't need the invitation to drive. And what are they going to do on Shabbat if you don't invite them? Are they going to have a Shabbat at home? Are they? Almost certainly not. They're going to be driving and they'll go to the movies and they'll go shopping and they'll go to other friends and they won't, right? They'll do it anyway, right? So you're not enabling anything. They have their car, they have their keys, and they have the full freedom to do whatever they want. They're going to do that anyway. And so you're not enabling anything. So this whole category of Lifnei Iver never even enters the arena because you're actually not enabling anything at all.
And if you don't technically invite them, you just say Shabbat's happening.
Yeah, so maybe you're going to get about, or maybe you invite them and you say, if you'd like to stay the night, I'll find you a place. And then then you're inviting them for Shabbos dinner. You're saying, listen, you want to spend Shabbos here? I'll find a place for you. They choose to get back in their car and go home. Like that's their choice. That's not on you anymore. The driving they could do anyway. You're offering them to spend Shabbos locally. Maybe not. I don't know if you have a spare bedroom. If you don't, you would find a friend who could put them up if they wanted to spend Shabbos in their community in walking distance. You could do that, and then this concern wouldn't apply. Another case, which is going to I think even expand this. Okay, I think we discussed. Maybe we didn't get there yet. Blessings before and after food. Have we discussed that yet? Has it come out? No, we haven't. We should talk about this. Is it on our? Is it on the?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Oh, there it is. Great. Okay. So there's an obligation to say blessings before food and after you eat. There's a prohibition against eating without saying a blessing first. So if you give someone food who won't say a blessing, maybe that's enabling them to sin. So this question was posed to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, very important, right? Died in 1995, very influential 20th century rabbi. The context of a not particularly religious, wealthy person who was a big donor to the yeshiva, whatever, the synagogue, whatever it was going to come and visit on a hot day. And they want to know, can we give him water? Because he'll drink it without a bracha, without a blessing first. And so maybe handing him the water is like passing the food across the river. Because he's going to take that water and drink it without a blessing, and that is enabling him to sin. If you don't give him the water, he can't drink it. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said, no, actually it's permissible to give him the water, because if you don't give him the water, he's going to come to hate Judaism and hate Jews. And that's actually going to lead to much greater sinning and alienation, right, from all that's good over the part, right? So when you're thinking about what is like enabling sin and what is that, like you got to think a little like holistically. and being nice to this guy and giving him water on a hot day when he's thirsty actually promotes his feeling good about Jews and religious Jews and the yeshiva that he's donating to, and he'll be involved in supporting Torah learning through his donations to the yeshiva and his strong, warm friendships with religious Jews who give him water when on a hot day. And that's actually very a little bit what you were suggesting, right? That sort of holistic approach of like what actually the impact of being invited to someone's house for a Shabbos meal. You're going to drive, so they don't know about Shabbos yet. They don't, but like if they have a wonderful Shabbos dinner at someone's house, then they're going to discover Shabbat, and who knows what could, but positive outcome could result. So that's a little bit what you were saying, right? That's about it. Okay. So it's a good answer after all. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I said mean things about it. Uh, so that's another approach. So you have to, in terms of interact, so you have to live with integrity, and that means not becoming complicit in other people's choices that you don't approve, not enabling them to sin, but also being recognizing when we're enabling versus when they can do it without us, and recognizing like holistically, big picture, what actually the impact of this interaction will be. Okay? Which you can't know for sure, which I think is the power of Rav Moshe Feinstein's strict opinion. Like, you don't know what's going to happen if this guy person comes to your house. Like, oh, you like just don't think you're so clever that you can, that's sort of the power of his approach, which is appreciated. Like, it's not how the synagogue functions. It's not how most synagogues function. Though some synagogues function. Synagogues keep their parking lots open on Shabbat, right? We have no gate on our parking lot, so we don't. Everyone walks to synagogue some from their house, some from their car. We don't know. I don't know who drives, who doesn't, right? Some synagogues they close the parking lot, like to really say we don't want to, or if you're gonna come, you're gonna drive, at least park around the corner, and we're gonna pretend that we right. So,
There was a gentleman who told me a story about how the Orthodox synagogue closed the parking lot, and so all the people who drive would park at the conservative synagogue and just walk over.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? Yeah, yeah. That's the right. That's I think that and I would say, you have people driving to and from your house for Shabbos dinner. Like, what does that impact have on you, and on your kids, and on your right, and when the environment you're trying to make, if all your guests are coming and going, and like so, there's a cost to that too, even if you're trying to share something beautiful with others. Okay, so let's see if so I'm thinking other. So I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm wondering if it's a situation where someone refuses to say a bracha before they eat or drink something.
Yeah.
Can you say a bracha on the food when you pass it to them, and would that count?
Do you say the bracha for them?
Yeah.
If they listen and say amen with intention that the bracha is for them, then it works. But if not, yeah. Yeah. You have a kind of shomea ka'onu. You can listen to somebody else's words with intention as though you're saying it yourself, and then it counts as though you say it yourself. But only if you want that, right? You can also teach them the bracha. You could say, let's say a bracha before we eat. You could do that, but that's not always, you might not always possible, right? Not everyone is so amenable to that. Yeah. Yeah, and then I think this also can drift into like certain like ethical questions about like selling products that are harmful to the consumers who buy them or to the world at large, and like are you enabling other people to do harmful, sinful things with your right? I mean, there's sort of ethical consideration, ethical types of questions as well, not just ritual questions. Okay, so I think leaf standards again, like you're responsible for others if you're enabling them to do bad things. I think that's a important concept. And then there's Messiah, which is when it's not the actual enabling, it's just aiding, being involved. Okay. Oh, and there's Masid. Masid is the worst of all. Masid is when you're like enticing others to sin. That's like really, really bad. That's like the worst of all. Okay. Tempting others, enticing others to sin. So that's not just enabling. They asked and you said yes to help, but it's um, yeah. Okay. Questions, comments? Okay. So let's quickly go into brachot. Talmud says, they shall eat and be satisfied and bless the Lord your God. And so for here we see that there's a biblical obligation every time you eat so you say it, say shiti, satiety. So you're full, you have an obligation to say a bracha afterwards. And the Talmud says also you have an obligation to say a bracha before. If you benefit from the world without a bracha, it's like you're stealing from this world that exists that we're allowed to benefit from it only if you say a bracha first. There's specific brachot for every kind of food. I don't know if there are pamphlets and websites that go through all the laws and the brachot. It's like relatively simple. Takes some study together. So I think we'll pause here because we're going to go next week. We'll go through all the brachot and which ones are for which types of food, and the before brachas and the after brachas and what you say before. Okay, and we'll just go through them all with the text actually in front of us, so we can sort of read and sort of see it. Okay, I would just say this too is also, I think, a sort of very distinctly Jewish form of. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. Just that. I guess there are others who say various forms of grace and benedictions and stuff before eating, but maybe only meals. I don't know, but that there's precision in the blessings we say before and after. Eat with the conscious eating, elevating the meal into a religious. The who wrote about this? I think Mr. Levashi writes about this, that every animal eats to stay alive, and so in our eating we are no different than animals. And this bothered the ancient Greeks, who sort of found it embarrassing that we're so similar to animals in eating. And one way to resolve this tension is through etiquette. And one way to resolve this tension is through cuisine. And so in that way, we take this very base like activity that we share with animals and we turn it into something human and something cultural. Judaism takes this activity and elevates it into something sacred and spiritual. That the table becomes like the altar in the temple through the liturgy that surrounds the meal, the blessings before, the blessings after, the ethical meaning of the inclusion of guests at our table, and the lonely, the poor, the travelers, the strangers, right? They're also sharing our table with us. And so in that way, again, like you have the animal, you have etiquette, cuisine is like ways to make it human, the Jewish ways to make it holy. Through again the whole liturgy around the table and the ethical practices of our shared meals. So I think that's like another interesting framing for understanding this. We'll pause here. Next time we'll go through the text itself and look and go over it. And we're gonna finish with one or two more classes. We're gonna finish the curriculum. It's exciting. All right. Oh, next week next week we'll start at 8:15, but we'll be 10 minutes late. Okay. All right.
I have a question about